I started my life when my parents had lost everything. We lived in a refugee camp in Uganda. From the time I was born to the time I finished a PhD, we lived in the refugee camps. So what life do you have in a refugee camp? The life you have is basically what you can do around you. And my parents literally made money from agriculture. So they were able to farm, they were able to have a little bit of income from the farming they did, and they were able to send us to school. So when I say I'm about food, I went to school because we could farm, we could sell food to other people. We had the clothes on our back because we could sell food to other people. But it was not just about me as well, it was just our whole communities. We lived because we survived that nightmare because it was possible to have food.
This is Selam and Hello, where stories of joy and justice vibrate with the rhythm of Africa and the diaspora. Salam, good people, wherever you are listening to us, can I ask for your help? Would you share this episode and would you subscribe? You have no idea how much it helps us. It helps us stay on the air. It helps people who are looking for African-focused, positive content to find us. And most importantly, it gives more space to the amazing people who share their stories on Salam and Hello. So 2 things, subscribe, and secondly, please share our work to every cousin you got. We are so grateful. Asante sana and namaste natin. Salam and hello, everyone. I'm Lily, and welcome back to Salam and Hello. Today, I am just delighted to have one of the world's leading experts in agriculture. In fact, some consider her one of Africa's key architects of food systems with us on the show today. We have been talking about living with the land. And what does that mean for us in our urban centers, in our rural areas? What does that mean for us in 2026? And as we look ahead to 2030 and beyond, how can we live better with the land? Today's expert is Dr. Agnes Kalibata. She is an agricultural scientist, a global food systems leader, and one of Africa's most influential voices on the future of farming. She is the founder and chair of C4 Impact Advisory Group and previously served as the president of AGRA. You may not know AGRA by name, but you certainly know their work. Over the many years of her tenure there, she worked with development partners, researchers, government, policymakers, private sector to improve food security and livelihoods for more than 30 million farming households across Africa. Just think about that. 30 million households have been affected by the work of AGRA and in fact improved. Their lives have been improved because of their efforts towards agricultural development. Before that, Dr. Kalibata served as Rwanda's Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, where she helped lead one of the continent's most remarkable agricultural transformations, leading Rwanda from food deficit to food security, while significantly reducing hunger. She later served as the United Nations Secretary General's Special Envoy for the 2021 Food Systems Summit, bringing together leaders from around the world to reimagine how food systems can better serve both people and the planet. Today, we will explore what African agriculture needs to become not just the backbone of our rural livelihoods, but a powerful engine for economic growth, climate resilience, and opportunity. And it is truly my honor and distinct privilege to welcome Dr. Agnes Kalibata to Salam and Hello. So welcome, Dr. Kalibata. Am I saying your name correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Agnes Kalibata is my name, and thank you for having me.
Such an honor, it truly is. When we were thinking about this series and who we wanted to talk to, your name was top of the list, but everybody was like, I don't think you can get her. I don't think you can get her. So we're so happy that schedules and timing allow for you to be with us here in Nairobi today. We're really, really grateful. So let's start at kind of the beginning and we'll work our way both through your career, but also your different points of leadership. You have shaped agriculture from both the village level, the average farmer in the rural settings, as well as at the global stage. I've mentioned your work at the UN and at AGRA, and of course with the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources in Rwanda. When did you first understand that food systems were more than just about food?
That's a very interesting question. I look at it from saying that I'm about food as a person. Uh, the reason I would say that is not because I eat food. The reason I would say that is because my education, my upbringing, my livelihood was because our parents farmed. The moment you realize that food is about people's livelihoods, it's about the health of their nutrition and the health that they get from food, it's about their dreams and income they're able to put together, then you realize that food is not just about feeding you. It's really economies for rural communities, it's economies for countries. When you take it to a national level, you see countries that have invested in food, that have invested in agriculture, transform people's livelihoods, transform their economies. So food is so much more.
It's life, huh?
Yeah, but again, just to really help connect with what I'm trying to say is, I started my life when my parents had lost everything. We lived in a refugee camp in Uganda. From the time I was born to the time I finished a PhD, we lived in the refugee camps. So what life do you have in a refugee camp? The life you have is basically what you can do around you. And my parents literally made money from agriculture. So they were able to farm, they were able to have a little bit of income from the farming they did, and they were able to send us to school. So when I say I'm about food, is I went to school because we could farm, we could sell food to other people. We had the clothes on our back because we could sell food to other people. But it was not just about me as well. It was just our whole communities. We lived because we survived that nightmare because it was possible to have food. But when you take it to a global level, there was once something called an agricultural revolution. An agricultural revolution happened and transformed the world in the West. My biggest frustration comes when we on this continent have not invested in food enough, in agriculture enough to make it that engine that it is for a household, that engine that it is for communities, and that engine that is for countries. Whole economies have transformed. This is an industry that is worth trillions of dollars. Absolutely. But for us, it remains subsistence. So literally, food is not about what we eat. Food is about our economies. Food is about how well we grow. Food is about how well our brains develop. But also, food is about how we live with the environment. Because right now, some of the challenges we have in our environment are literally because we overused, we undervalued how food is extracted from the environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've said so many important things just in capturing why food systems are more than just about food. So I want to start at kind of where you mentioned about your family and your background as being in refugee camps and using food systems as a way of living, but then also realizing it has the power for transformation. What did you learn during those years in those camps that you still use today? What lessons, what insights still guide your work?
So I would say that my earliest insight, and I still believe today, and it has guided everything that I do, is farmers are not the problem. You know, when we are in agriculture, we say farmers don't do this, farmers are too small, farmers this and that. Farmers are actually doing everything they can to make that food system work for them. Then you quickly learn that for food systems to work for smallholder farmers, you need it to be a system. You need it not to be just the farmer X that is growing food.
Right.
You need to think about where do they get their seeds from? Where do they get their fertilizers from? Where do they get their markets from? It has to work as a system. It rarely works as a single part of a system. But every time we make investments, most of the times we've made investments, most of the programs and I've lived in the sector long enough, most of the projects we've funded or moved forward are usually addressing one problem. It's only recently that we've started thinking, but why aren't we thinking about the system? You know, one of the things I used to ask my colleagues at AGRA is, why are we talking about seeds? A farmer doesn't need just seeds. Put yourself in the shoes of a farmer. If I have seed but I don't have fertilizers, if I have all the above but I don't have a market, what's the value?
Right.
I remember one time we had this really, really incredible variety. When I was a minister and I asked my mom if she could grow it, she planted it, had incredible yield, because for her it was like night and day, had incredible yield, but she told me, where is the market? I was like, hey, why are you worried about? You have more food than you need. She said, that wasn't the point. I can feed myself. If you can't get me the market, don't bring this stuff that is everywhere. For her, it was a burden. So it has to operate in a system. But this is the most important part I think I've learned about moving food systems forward, is you can't do that without leadership. You have to have the right leadership, and leadership is at so many different levels. But because it's a complex system, you always need that ability to pull the system back together, that ability to identify the different pieces and move them together. So it's only when you have leadership that is willing to pull that together and make sure that different things are moving as they should move, in the sequences they should move, all together, that you get it to work. So when you look at the African continent, one of the challenges we've had, like the lack of consistency in this complex system, really undermines the system itself. So we have a whole lot of start and stop. And you know, for agriculture sector to start and stop is just like eating in the morning and assuming you're not going to eat in the evening.
Let me ask you more about that. For those of us who are non-technicians, who might not appreciate what that means, could you give an example of where that you see that happening, that it is actually undermining the development that you've tried to move forward, AGRA has tried to move forward around agricultural and food systems?
So one of the places where you see this a lot is in government. Sometimes we have a minister that is ready to move things and they work very hard, they move things. The next day, another minister comes and it's like, no, my agenda is this and that. They
so this political change will disrupt it.
Over. So for me, I said leadership and consistency of leadership. So it's not that you have to have the same leaders, but you have to have the same agenda. You have to realize that this agenda needs to be built on. If you're trying to get technologies to people, seeds come from research systems that work. I sit on the board of CIMIT. They have incredible varieties, and all these varieties need to get into farmers' hands. But if you don't look at how the research builds onto the extension system that you're building and how that feeds into the ability for farmers to access fertilizer. So that ability to have leadership that is able to bring these things together. And you don't have to be a scientist, but you have to have the right people to help you drive the system. So I think for me, the idea of ensuring that farmers have what they need, because farmers are working very hard, ensuring that the system approach to food systems is really the focus of how we move forward, and then the fact that we need leadership. And there are very good examples everywhere where you've had leadership focus on how agriculture sector moves forward, whether it is in Ethiopia and how they move their food systems forward, whether it is, I could name many countries, even in my own country, Rwanda, and many other countries, but also how this guy I call him a guy, Norman Borlaug, when he thought about how do I get to change the agriculture sector. And by the way,
and who is he?
Norman Borlaug was the person who first came up with the idea of improved varieties, hybrid varieties, which these are varieties that change your yield from half a ton to something like 5 metric tons per hectare.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When he first came up with that idea, he realized that, yes, that's the technology. It's the genes that are producing that difference. But then he realized that the only way you could get it to happen is if leaders embraced this. So he went to India. India used to be the country that people referred to as from sheep to mouth, right? Because they were importing food.
Import everything,
But when he talked to the prime minister and showed them what was going on, he went to Ethiopia. He talked to Meles Zenawi. So because he understood that once leaders embrace this, once you understood that it's a complex system that you must move together, you actually can deal with the challenge of food security. So fast forward, food My insights are those.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's I think what you're highlighting for us that maybe we don't appreciate, for example, I was just traveling. I got back from travels. I went to the grocery store to, buy groceries. I pick my pineapple, I pick my tomatoes, I get my onions. I don't always think, where did it come from? I know I prefer my pineapples from Uganda. They have great pineapples, right? Or we know when it's mango season, we get excited. But we don't always give thought to everything that precedes that, the variety, the seed quality, the farmer support. I have a simple question for you, but I'm curious.
But before you answer that simple question, let me just help you understand.
Yeah.
That farmer, pineapple farmer, could be a 10,000 hectare farmer or 5,000 hectare farmer, or could be half a hectare farmer like you see in Rwanda.
Exactly.
Now, that makes the system even more complex. It's more complex when we are dealing with smallholder farmers.
Yeah.
And that's where we get stuck. Because the system that you work in when you're large farmers, the decision-making process is much easier for large farmers.
Yeah.
So in most countries where you're dealing with large farmers, the system is complex, yes, because it needs all these things that are coming from outside you. But it's easy because the decision-making process is based on one person.
I see.
In the smallholder farmer environment, for them to be viable, you need 30,000 smallholder farmers to equal the one farmer in Iowa,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So for them, the decision-making process becomes even more complex. So the complexity is part of where we get stuck. And that's where we need leadership that is consistent so that you can continue building on the previous successes rather than always start over.
So let's keep going with that idea, because I think you're touching on what's so important for us to appreciate. Africa is made up, I shouldn't say primarily, but a significant number of small, primarily small farmers, small entities. How are we, number one, functioning at all at this point? How are we managing? Secondly, what needs to change for us to either scale, to increase profits? The African Development Bank is predicting tremendous growth for the continent and in East Africa, our region specifically, over the next few years. How does agriculture fit into that growth? I'm curious, because what you're painting a picture of is that it's incredibly complex. We need leadership to mitigate the threats to that complexity. And yet we have this growth that's happening as well. And I'm wondering if agriculture is a part of it, or if it's just going to continue and to be something that we have to figure out.
So there are all sorts of models when you look at the agricultural system. But borrowing from my own work in Rwanda, where you have the smallest smallholder farmer, or probably on the continent, what is working for us as a continent, and agriculture has grown. There's a lot that has happened that is working for us.
Sure.
The seed systems are working, the technologies, we refer to them as technology. But this is just to help you understand, this is a difference from earning half a ton, like I said earlier, to earning 5 metric tons.
Yeah.
So earning half a ton will probably give you, I don't know, $1, and earning 5 metric tons will give you 10 times more, something like that. So that is already happening. That ability to have the technologies that are shaping how food system, how agriculture is working within the rest. So ideally, we have access to the technologies the rest of the world has access to move food systems forward.
Okay,
we do.
We do.
So what makes it difficult is breaking it down to the smallholder farmer level. That's been probably Africa's biggest challenge. How do you break down what you see in the rest of the world at large scale to break it down to the smallholder farmer? Let's talk about mechanization.
Okay.
We got stuck for the longest time in thinking that smallholder farmers should own big machines.
Sure.
But also big machinery makers are selling to Africa big machines. But except no farmer needs a big machine. If he was to use it on my farm, it would be done in less than half a day. Then what do you do for the rest of the day?
Yeah.
So until we figured out that we can have tractor hire models, just like you're using Uber, tractor hire, you don't need to own a tractor.
Right.
Until you come up with models where hundreds of farmers can use one tractor and you, the business, is the tractor as opposed to farming.
Interesting.
Until you figure out those models. Until you figure out that for these farmers to access seed, they don't need to be to own a huge seed producing facility, but they can go and if you create a business that retails seed to smallholder farmers in a village, that seed can come from wherever. In Comesa, we have a law, we have policies that allow us, if seed is produced in Ethiopia, it should be able to be grown in Rwanda. So you can produce seed in Ethiopia, in the same environment, you can have it in Rwanda, retailed by a village person in Rwanda. So finding systems that work for smallholder farmers, it took us a while to find them. Now we found them. Now we can actually have smallholder farmers produce at the same level as other farmers when they have all these technologies in their hands. Do we want them to stay like that?
Yeah.
I look at it this way. I look at it as a transition. Everybody needs an opportunity to be able to define and decide what type of business they want to be in. Smallholder farmers use this, what I'm talking about, good seeds, fertilizers, whatever, to build a capital base, an income base. Should that be how you get into a motorcycle business? Should that be how you get into buying a car and be part of buying that tractor that you rent to your other villages? Let it be. But you should be able to use your base to move on to the next level. Part of it might be that you might have to sell your land to the next farmer so that the next farmer grows. Ideally, as governments, we should have that capability and function and capability to. The problem is we are not protecting agricultural land. If we are protecting, and we should, if we are protecting agricultural land, one farmer would sell to the next farmer. But these days when they sell, it's just to build a house. You see what I mean? So, but if I was protecting agricultural land, if I sold to you land, your land will become bigger. So the farmers that stay in there being more profitable because you have more access to land, and the farmers that go out to things they find are more attractive to them. So that transition has to happen. Right now, people are leaving agriculture and they are leaving. I mean, my mom is not going to be farming. She's old. What will we do with the land we have? So people are actually leaving agriculture, but what then happens? Are we consolidating agriculture so that it becomes what we've seen other people do with agriculture, or are we going to continue fragmenting it because we are mixing it with everything else?
Because even though you're saying the small-scale farmers are sustainable as they are,
they're not necessarily sustainable, but they can transition.
They would transition to be cooperatives or larger groups. You know, you mentioned this idea of selling the land. Tell me if this statistic is correct, though, that Africa has about 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. So how should we think about this opportunity? It might be one thing for me to buy your farmland, but if there is so much of this, uncultivated land that's available to me, why would I do that as opposed to just cultivating?
Because there are two ways to think about it. So 60% of uncultivated land is not sitting on my land. Okay, so if I'm a farmer, it's not sitting in my land or in my neighborhood. So if I'm a farmer, that's a different statistic.
It's a simple geographical challenge.
That doesn't speak to me.
Not my neighborhood.
So if you're like a farmer in Rwanda, that statistic doesn't mean anything, right? Because you're already maxed out. But let's look at it.
Where is that land then, Dr. Kalibata? Where is that land like 1% here, 2% there? Is that data a bit misleading?
So let me just paint a picture for you. If you look at Africa's larger economies and populations, they are probably sitting between 4 or 5 countries. They're going to be sitting in West Africa, you're looking at Nigeria. In East Africa, you're looking at Ethiopia and Tanzania and Kenya. In Southern Africa, you're looking at probably South Africa. But most of the other countries have smaller populations and huge amounts of land. So that's where the land is sitting.
That's
where the land is
sitting. So there's a mismatch between populations and available land.
It's not a mismatch. It's how it is.
Well, I guess I'm saying mismatch in the sense that if you have a population, if you look at Zimbabwe or Zambia, where you have smaller populations but more land, then you don't have simply the people power to maybe take advantage of that opportunity.
The people power to take advantage of that opportunity. But then how do you take, as a continent, how do you take advantage of that opportunity? That's probably the next biggest opportunity that we need to be talking about. Let's anchor it in the Africa-Free Continental Trade Area. Let's anchor it in region of food trade. To paint this picture, when Tanzania produces 2 metric tons per hectare, markets in Tanzania crash because Tanzania doesn't need that amount of maize. But if the market was larger, Kenya needs the maize, Rwanda needs the maize, everybody needs the maize. So I think we need to start looking at potential versus regional, right? Our potential, 60%, available land will only be useful if we do regional dynamics, because they are sitting in different places. But also we need to look at it from a food production potential. We shouldn't just say, oh, because there's land here, we should go and use that land. Land has more value than food. It is environmental. It's giving us all these environmental benefits or whatever. But we need to identify those places where, as a continent, we need to say, where is our food security going to come from? So there now, when I was at AGRA, one of the things we pushed hard for is what we are calling food baskets, right? Food baskets are areas that have the biggest potential to produce food. So in Ethiopia, you can produce wheat very well. In fact, Ethiopia is now wheat self-sufficient. That's not something that was happening about 3-5 years ago.
That's amazing.
It's something that they decided, and they are doubling down. They're importing so much wheat, and they're asking themselves, why are we importing so much wheat? But let's go beyond importing. Ethiopia and Sudan can feed this region, right? Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt can feed the rest of us. These are things that start becoming clear with all these global disruptions of trade, and you start saying, but why isn't Africa feeding itself? Well, who needs what, and where would we get wheat from? Ethiopia and that region produces wheat. Zambia and Zimbabwe produce wheat. How are we really redefining our ability to produce and our 60% land to use that potential to feed ourselves? It's not just wheat. It's rice, it's maize. Between rice, maize, wheat, and soybean, we are spending $34 billion worth importing it from outside the continent. And yet 60%, as you say, is sitting with us on the continent. But we have the opportunity to redefine that and make agriculture work for us, small or big farmers, if we look at it from a regional perspective, because the region allows us a larger market. The moment we continue to stay small markets, producing just what we need in those markets in our countries, then really it becomes very difficult to make agriculture viable for the region. It becomes difficult for that 60% to mean anything.
So this is so valuable, just to think about the fact that I've always believed this, but it's nice to have it confirmed that we actually have the solutions in our own hands for our own challenges. So this food insecurity, we can address it. Is the only barrier right now the implementation of policy? Is it political goodwill? Is it being able to identify markets more clearly? What is our barrier? If Sudan and Ethiopia can produce enough wheat to take care of our region, why isn't it happening?
I think we need to come to that regional political maturity, because there's so much we can do beyond food that we can do when we attain the regional political maturity that we should have, and we stop looking at each other as individual countries. We can build, the thing that makes food affordable in many places is infrastructure. We have railway infrastructure that goes only to mineral places. Is it so difficult to do the math and realize that the rest of the world is surviving or is able to export food to us because they are using railways? And yes, deep sea, but mostly to move from place to place, they're using railways. We can do railways. We do have all these railways that need a little bit of patch up here and there. We already have a roadmap for that. We already have even a mapping for that. I think it was driven by NEPAD back then. They have what they call the infrastructure roadmap for Africa. If we combine the infrastructure roadmap with the food basket roadmap, because that really we've identified those areas, and then we combined it with the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, where we are saying, let's trade based on our competitive advantages. If you produce wheat for us. Let's trade in that. But you see, you will not bring it to my market if you can't reach me. If it's easier for me to get wheat from Brazil to my country, and then it is to get it from my neighbor, I'm going to get it from Brazil.
We talk about this all the time, even with travel, right? We mentioned we can't even go next door to see each other easily at times. And so to hear that having this kind of trickle-down effect is quite sobering.
So it's true. The simple truth is we need to understand that it's not like something we need to figure out. India does very well at everything because it's one country, it's thinking together, it's connected, it's pulling everything together, it's building, China does the same thing. So we have come up with the Africa Free Continental Trade Area to overcome our individuality,
Yes.
to overcome our smallness,
Yes.
to come together. But we also need to double down on the political goodwill to make it happen. Look at financing. I was telling people yesterday, telling them, we talk about financing. Oh, the biggest problem is financing. Really? We're sitting on so much financing when it comes to our pension funds, whatever. Why haven't we created baskets of our pension funds where one country can borrow from another? Why do we have to borrow from other countries? The World Bank is about us borrowing from other countries. Does the World Bank have a fund from Africa, pension funds, that is lending to it so that we are making money for ourselves back?
Yeah.
Our borrowing is making money for us. Why is our borrowing making money for other people?
Right.
So these are some of the things we could solve together. Because if we did that, agriculture can move. If we did that, railways can move. If we did that, education can move. And all these things are interconnected. So one thing holds back the other.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful way to really put a clear point on it. You delivered the Sir John Crawford Memorial Address in Australia in 2021. And I want to read you a quote from your address. You said that the world's current food systems are failing people, the environment, and our shared future. 5 years later, what progress do you see? Are we moving from just having conversations to transformation? You've cited so many powerful examples of what could be possible, but where have you seen real progress, and what is giving you hope? You've identified some of the places where there are challenges, but I would love to see, are we doing any better? What's giving you hope?
I guess there are a number of things that would give me hope. First of all, realizing that what we've been doing is not sustainable. And that's what the Food System Summit was about, helping people realize that, guys, we are extracting, and it's beginning to impact us. So we need to step back and rethink. So, and I think everybody does begin to understand that, yes, we need to reshape our food system. We need to start being conscious. If I'm a consumer at the end of the value chain, I need to think about this thing that I'm eating. What does it mean? And you're beginning to see a whole lot of that. So that is pause and is becoming something that we are seeing in the food system. But more importantly, we're seeing a lot of innovation. That's probably the thing that I get the most hope. Again, like I said, from institutions like CIMIT that are now producing varieties that we haven't seen in a very long time, that are able to quickly break down and bring, let me say, the easiest way to put it is this. So there are diseases that you have to live with, but using like gene editing, like what CIMIT is doing now, gene editing, they're able to nip out that gene that allows the plant to get that disease, right? So something like aflatoxin in groundnuts that we don't even know that is there, but really impacts our health, is quickly removed, and those groundnuts become acceptable, and you don't even have to think about it. So those ways, new ways of producing protein, we now have plant-based proteins as opposed to animal-based proteins. We have ways of thinking about systems and delivering value to farmers, like I was talking about earlier, designing new ways of getting mechanization to farmers different from where. So there's real good reason for hope. And the beautiful thing is people are thinking very fast. People are seeing it as an opportunity. Agriculture is no longer something you leave to old people. Now young people are saying, I need to be in this sector. I need to understand. They understand that it's a sector that can help them make money, but they also want to bring new ideas there. So they are interested. So that's a reason for hope.
That's hopeful.
And then the other thing is we do understand that it impacts our environment. People are trying also to reduce their footprint use the footprint that the agricultural sector has on the environment. People are not just doing it for the sake or just doing it to extract. They're very conscious of the damage it could do, and people are trying to ensure that we don't have that type of damage anymore. So all these are things that we are not thinking about before. We think about how do we use less fertilizers and produce more? How do we use a different type of protein? So all these things that have happened in the food system in the last few years are reasons to hope, because people are worried about the future of food systems. People are worried about the impact on health. People are worried about or are excited about innovating around it and coming up with new ideas. oh, these are things that we should be excited about.
You've given me definitely hope. And the last thing I would ask you is, as somebody who has such tremendous experience at truly the global stage to your own humble beginnings and your own family of farming, what's one call to action or one thing you could say the person listening in urban centers, in the diaspora, listening to this conversation, what's one thing they can do to participate in living with the land better? You know, all of us should be stewards. So what's your advice for all of us, a practical thing we could do?
So there are two things that I would say, not one thing.
Great. Please.
Because if you're African diaspora, there's one thing that really excites me. I almost feel a little bit disappointed about that we haven't given African diaspora enough opportunity to invest in food systems, because this is really an investable area. This is an area that gives back to you if we design it as an investment opportunity, but also that gives to those people that are living it. So you're contributing to others while earning money. You're doing good while
making money. I like that. Yes.
So that's an area that, you know, like we as Africans need to start thinking about how do we help this area become investable and attract our diaspora to it. So that's one. The other is, we must leave a better environment than we found it. There's a lot of damage that has already happened. But every time we eat food, if we ask ourselves, how did this food come to my table? Where is it coming from? And we stop worrying about how perfect it is, because we live in a world. The world is composed of animals, insects, whatever. It's not a perfect world. But every time we push food to be perfect, we are damaging the environment. We are losing so much food. We are influencing so much waste. So we need to stop expecting food to be perfect and agree that the environment is feeding us the right way. I'm not saying that you compromise, that you eat dirty food or whatever. I'm just saying that we need, first of all, to give back. We need to give back, nurture as much as we can, but also we need to stop expecting perfection from nature. So have that balance. We are not perfect. Why are we expecting nature to give us perfect fruits, perfect whatever? So true.
So true. I like that, getting back to the organic roots that we all came from.
Exactly. Because every time we push for that, we are encouraging more chemicals, we are encouraging more pesticides, we are killing more honeybees, we are killing more, because we are pushing for perfection. How did we get to that? Why are we living in that environment? If we are not perfect, why are we expecting perfection from nature? So because that forces us to really push the envelope on what nature can give us, and we know that's damaging.
Absolutely. Dr. Kalibata, I could have kept you here another day, full day, just talking to you, but I know you're busy and you have your next engagement to go to. But thank you so much for enlightening us, for teaching us, for reminding us what's true, what's possible for living with the land better. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And listeners, you'll have all the information you need in the show notes. We'll give you how you can follow Dr. Kalibata's work, how you can get involved, and stay tuned and join us again next time.
Worried, anxious group of people trying to move along. Maybe one day we'll get up to something. Until then we say, hold up. I know it's hard, but baby, you just got to hold on.